Today, we're climbing up to the cruising altitude of a modern jetliner, way up into an environment where humans, well, we just can't survive on our own. We're talking about a danger that is so sneaky, it can take a pilot out of the game without them ever knowing that something's wrong.
Imagine this for a second. What if the most lethal threat you could possibly face in the cockpit wasn't some huge storm or a catastrophic mechanical failure, but something happening inside your own body?
A threat that, instead of making you panic or feel pain, brings on this weird wave of warmth, confidence, even euphoria. Yeah, this is the silent and very deceptive world of hypoxia. Okay, let's dive into this. Because to really get a handle on hypoxia, we have to clear up a huge misconception about the air we breathe when we get way up there.
You know, a lot of people think that as you go higher, the percentage of oxygen in the air just drops off, but that's actually not true. Whether you're standing on a beach at sea level or you're at 40,000 feet, the air is pretty much always about 21% oxygen. So if the recipe for air doesn't change, what's really going on? Why is it so incredibly dangerous up there? Well, the answer isn't about the percentage of oxygen, it's all about the pressure.
Think of it like this. Down at sea level, the high air pressure packs all those oxygen molecules tightly together. So every breath you take delivers this really dense, rich supply to your lungs. But as you climb, the pressure drops, and those same molecules spread way out. You're still breathing in 21% oxygen, sure, but each breath is bringing in far fewer of them. Your body is basically being starved of oxygen, one thin breath at a time.
And this oxygen starvation, it has a name. It's a condition every single high-altitude pilot is trained to fear, and more importantly, to respect.
Hypoxia. Simply put, it's just an oxygen deficiency in your body's tissues. And while it affects your whole body, it launches its first and most deceptive attack on the one organ that needs oxygen more than any other, your brain.
So let's take a little trip up through the atmosphere and see what this actually feels like. Because it doesn't start with you gasping for air. No, it starts much more subtly than that.
Believe it or not, the very first detectable effect can happen as low as 5,000 feet. That's an altitude tons of hikers and general aviation pilots see all the time. Your retinas are super sensitive to oxygen levels, so the very first thing to degrade is your night vision.
Now, as a pilot climbs higher without oxygen, let's say they push past 12,000 or 14,000 feet, the brain's performance starts to fall off a cliff. Concentrating gets hard. Simple math becomes a real challenge. Your reflexes get sluggish. You might get confused. Your vision could start to dim, and your fingernails might even begin to turn a little blue. That's a condition called cyanosis.
But here is the truly terrifying part of this whole thing. Just as your ability to fly the airplane is completely falling apart, you might feel fantastic. Your brain, starved for oxygen, can actually trigger a feeling of euphoria. You become overconfident, happy, and totally blissfully unaware that you are in grave danger. You literally don't know what you don't know.
This progression is so well understood that it's broken down into 4 clear stages. It all starts with the indifference stage, where you just have those minor effects, like losing some night vision. Then you move into a stage where your body tries to compensate. Then a stage of real disturbance, where you are obviously impaired, before you finally hit the critical stage, and that's where unconsciousness is just moments away.
This whole progression leads us to one of the most critical concepts in all of high-altitude flight, a literal countdown to incapacitation.
It's called the time of useful consciousness, or TUC. Now, this isn't how long you have until you pass out. No, it's how long you have to recognize there's a problem and do something about it, like get an oxygen mask on before you're no longer capable of saving yourself.
And this is where that clock starts ticking, fast. At 25,000 feet, you've got a couple of minutes to react. But climb to a typical cruising altitude, say 35,000 feet, and that window shrinks to just 1 minute. At 40,000 feet, you have only 18 seconds.
Okay, so if the environment is that hostile, how on earth do we fly in it safely every single day? Well, the answer lies in some absolutely brilliant engineering and some very strict procedures.
We have 3 main weapons in the fight against hypoxia. The most direct one, of course, is supplemental oxygen. Pilots also learn to reduce their physical activity to conserve what they have. But the real game changer, the piece of technology that makes modern air travel even possible, is cabin pressurization.
Cabin pressurization is this absolute marvel that lets us bring a bubble of dense, sea-level-like air with us all the way up to cruising altitude.
The plane's systems are constantly pumping compressed air into the sealed cabin, creating this artificial atmosphere inside that our bodies can actually thrive in.
And this, right here, is why this all matters to anyone who's ever been on a plane. Even when you're cruising at 40,000 feet, the pressure inside the cabin is kept at an equivalent altitude of 8,000 feet or less. This keeps every single passenger and crew member safely in that indifferent stage, where the only possible effect is that tiny reduction in night vision.
So if you remember one thing from all of this, let it be this. Hypoxia doesn't feel like you're in danger. There's no choking sensation, no desperate gasping for air.
It feels like everything is perfectly fine, maybe even wonderful, right up until the moment it's too late. It is a silent deception, which leaves us with a really critical question for anyone who operates at the edges of human limits. How do you possibly fight an enemy that your own brain is telling you is a friend?